Hello, hello, hello. Hooligan Soccer Podcast, FA Cup 5th round, CONCACAF MLS game week 1 special. That's 5, that's right, and 1, and also another one as well. Game week 2 with the Qooligan, as always.
1 special.
Thank you, Qooligan. Thank you, as always. Myself, Gary Stryker, and obviously we've got a unique one today as well. They're all of these unique and sort of different competitions weaving themselves into the narrative and the fixture schedule as well, as it's as we're jumping from Premier League to Champions League to FA Cup and obviously sort of all of those things. So today we've got a special and unique concoction. I don't think we've had this cocktail before, Qooligan, where we're going to touch on the CONCACAF Champions Cup, the FA Cup 5th round coming up as well, which actually there's some interesting fixtures, and of course the MLS game week 2 as well, as things spice up and sort of get going as well. So that's where we're going.
That is true. And like all great cocktails, 3 ingredients is all you need.
With ice.
Anything more than that, ice is not an ingredient. To be very clear. And we're on the fence about whether or not bitters are an ingredient. I'm not entirely sure they are, but yeah, all the great ones.
But surely a garnish counts as an ingredient as well. A slice of lime or a slice of lemon.
No.
It's orange flavor. That's an ingredient.
No, it's a garnish. It's a garnish.
Well, we'll have to pull up some cocktails in another episode, perhaps. So
in another episod, yes,
absolutely, in another episode. It's too early in the day to be day drinking now, and
too early in the day for drinking. Other than H2O, which we advocate as frequently as necessary,
and as you've established, is not an ingredient because ice is not an ingredient. So yes. Okay. Speaking of ingredients, shall we start CONCACAF? CONCACAF Champions.
Do it.
Is it the Champions Cup or is it the Champions League?
No,
but it was Champions League.
It was
Champions League.
I don't know. Please. The way that these tournaments rename themselves, it's a joke. And everybody's, constantly trying to get a little one up on somebody else doing this, doing that. No, I think we were misspeaking earlier. It is the equivalent of the Champions League in Europe, but it has got its own special vibe. And it did kick off February 1st, I believe, was when it started for this season. We had some discussions on it, but there were some interesting. We're wrapping up the last fixtures of the first round are now coming to a close.
Yes.
There's only one game remaining, which we'll get into. But this week there were a handful of matches, and some results came out. The biggest one, of course, was and this one was a little bit surprising to me, was Real Salt Lake.
Yes,
had their second reverse fixture against Herediano which is out of Costa Rica, a little bit north of San Jose. Now Herediano is a good team. They have won the Costa Rican League 3 years, not consecutive. They won in 20. I think they won in 22, or is it? No, they won in 2020, 2022, and 2024. So they're going on a real strong run. And but the first fixture down in Costa Rica was not a good one. It was a 0-0 draw, not a terribly illustrious affair. Neither team really did all that great. So this one was going to be big, and I really figured the Costa Ricans were going to have a problem coming up to Salt Lake, playing in the cold because they played at night. Admittedly, it wasn't too late, but they did have to play at night in the cold. My goodness.
And they rolled them over as well. Real Salt Lake took a beating.
No, they didn't. Well, no, see, that's where it gets interesting, because they didn't roll them over. Actually, Salt Lake completely and utterly dominated the first half. And I mean, really. Herediano had one shot on goal, and they had one corner, and that was it. Real had 14 shots, one that went in the net, a number that they had some real sitters that they missed.
Yes.
And but they were feeling high and mighty going in. I mean, the pundits were all talking, oh, Real could put on the subs and do this and do that. But then Herediano came out to the locker room, and that's when they started putting the pressure on.
Okay.
And so, yeah, listen, I don't want to, I'm not disparaging Costa Rican, club soccer by any means, because it's a good league. But I was surprised at this, and I think that Real is now, even though they have only played 2 games in their campaign, they're in trouble because they, now they played 3 games, because they played the first leg. So they had a 0-0 draw in the first leg. They were embarrassed at San Jose Earthquakes. I mean, that was embarrassing. They got beat 4-0, and then they lost in this. The only silver lining in this rather gloomy cloud hanging over Utah is that they don't have the tight fixtures anymore. They get to take a break.
They're relieved, yeah. But it's the beginning of the season, so if you're wanting to have to sort of like take a break in that sense, that is a little bit concerning, right? So that's not a good start, right?
They don't have an attack. They've got nothing up front. They're just there's very little cohesion. There's very little chemistry. There's been some changes, so no, it's not good. And I think the coach is going to have a real struggle on their hands. And now, to add insult to injury, they have to host the Sounders on Saturday.
That's
awkward, right?
Yes.
That's going to be a little rough.
Yeah.
So yeah,
we'll get into
now,
that.
Sounders, of course, breezed through 6-2 on aggregate.
I see that. Yes.
Against Antigua. And then FC Cincinnati also breezed through 4-1 on aggregate. So these were easy, advancements for them.
Yeah.
We obviously know Miami beat Sporting Kansas City. That was earlier in the week. We talked about that before. And then LAFC, shockingly, had a real difficult time. They had to rely on the away goal rule because they do actually use the away goal rule in this league.
It feels like the CONCACAF Champions Cup is a few years behind the Champions League, so I'm sensing a restructuring of the competition in a few years' time, where they'll go to a mega league and sort of structure it that way as well, right? But that's But
yeah, I mean, fan. They barely eked by Colorado.
Yeah.
No, it's like.
Yeah. So you've got, it set up some interesting fixtures. Obviously, Columbus, then obviously they play Columbus now, and obviously the next round looking at it, which happens next week, I believe. That's and then obviously you've got Miami going to Jamaica as well. I was reading about this, how Cavaliers have had to take over the national stadium because they normally have a capacity of 3,500, so they can expand to 30,000 because, of course, everyone wants to come and see the traveling circus that is Miami. And then obviously,
and by the way, that is freaking huge for Cavalry. The amount that the revenue they're going to make just off of that fixture alone is going to keep that club afloat for a super long period.
It's the cash injection as well, which is good, and that is the sort of the benefits. And again, there's a certain sort of like FA Cup-esque feeling here as well, where you can get these sort of relative minnows. And really what it is basically all of the non-MLS clubs get the opportunity to play against the MLS clubs. And then if they can get deep into the competition, into the round of 16, again, there's some prize money and sort of gate receipts and some merch and things like that, which will pop on the revenue numbers, which is fantastic.
And then ultimately it's the Liga MX clubs that tend to come out on top. The quality level of the Liga MX is strong. And those teams are well constructed and ruthless. I mean, they play in a very, very difficult league, and they do not take prisoners.
And it's interesting, like the cultural side of it, and therefore that's kind of reflected in the style of soccer as well that they play as well, right? Because if you think about it, you're going to get, whereas my read on the Mexican league as well is, again, it's very sort of quick, nimble, very technical, and sort of lots of fast moving as well. Whereas perhaps more in the MLS, it's more sort of tactical and strategical, and there's some sort of more counter-attacking and those kind of things. Am I talking absolute nonsense there, would you say, or do you have an alternative viewpoint?
I actually think the Liga MX is slower.
Interesting. Okay.
And not that there's not quick passing and crisp passing, and there is without a doubt, but there is a bit more respect between the defender and the attacker on the one-on-ones because that those one-on-one battles, they tend to give a little more space. But when they tackle real hard.
They crunch. They go in for the crunches. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, it is thumping. And they're not afraid to just go in and take you out.
Just go for it. Yeah.
And again, you can't characterize an entire. It's unfair to characterize an entire league based on one thing or the other. But no, it's they are definitely different styles. I just each one, massive amounts of teams too, right? I mean, certainly the MLS is at 30 is a gigantic league. Liga MX is smaller. Almost every other league is. So, yeah, I think it'll be fascinating. There is only one remaining game in the CONCACAF. That will be played tonight between Vancouver and the arch rivals of Herediano, Saprissa.
Yes. Okay.
Also out of, I believe, also out of San Jose. So yeah.
Okay.
And Vancouver's down 2-1.
This episode is brought to you by Peacock. The new Peacock original documentary, Matthew Perry, A Hollywood Tragedy, dives deep into the beloved actor's rise to fame and his tragic death. 5 people, including Perry's personal assistant, 2 medical doctors, and an alleged Hollywood drug dealer known as the Ketamine Queen, were charged with conspiracy to illegally provide Perry with the ketamine. Explore the details of the case in this heartbreaking special, streaming now only on Peacock.
Support comes from ServiceNow. We're for people doing the creative work they actually want to do. That's why this ad was written and read by a real person and not AI. You know what people don't want to do? Boring, busy work. Now with AI agents built into the ServiceNow platform, you can automate millions of repetitive tasks in every corner of your business, IT, HR, and more, so your people can focus on the work that they want to do. That's putting AI agents to work for people. It's your turn. Visit servicenow.com.
Yeah, so they've got a job to do as well, right?
So they've got a job to do. Yeah,
they do. The other thing that I've noticed as well about the MLS side as well, when we're talking about sort of the cultural nuances of these things, is, obviously with the traditional American sports, the sort of big 3 leagues as well, they always have this, the home team always is the second team that's named when they do the sort of the lineups in the score and on the scores, right? And whereas if you go to sort of all of the European leagues, so for example, if Real Madrid are playing against Bayern Munich, whenever you're watching the TV screens and sort of however it's presented, it'll be Real Madrid first and then Bayern Munich second. But whereas in sort of American football, basketball, and baseball, they do the inverse. Have you noticed that? Oh, there we go. Yes, this is the nuances of having to assimilate into the American world, just as I have to do with my dates and also my sort of spellings of American English. But what I have noticed is that the MLS adopts the non-American sort of format of having the home team first and then the away team second, versus in terms of the other, as I say, the other 3 ones. You look perplexed on this one.
The USL does the same.
The USL does the same as well. Home team first. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure.
But my point is, being an American league and MLS, they've actually veered away from the tradition that the way the Americans sort of present.
But they
fixtures.
do that in American football. The home team's always on that side as well.
It's on the second.
Been the case.
It's always in American football, the home team second.
No, it's not.
It is. You'll see.
No.
We'll have to. We'll.
Not
we'll
that I
have to
watch
come back to
American
that as well.
Not that I watch American football,
This
but
is,
no.
This is. I'm pretty sure this is the case, and they sort of have it second. So there's a nuance. Just as I have to adapt.
And are you
adjust
talking
my
on
dates.
Broadcast or in journalism?
I'm talking on broadcast. So whenever the fixture is presented,
I'll go and
team.
look, but I don't recall that being the case. But
Yeah.
I could be wrong.
I'm aware of this having sort of called that. we will. Someone's going to have egg on their face, but we will. We're not afraid to call each other out here. So we'll come back.
No,
and confirm
not at
that
all.
one.
Not at all.
Yep.
Anyway,
Indeed.
I think that's enough for CONCACAF. It's fun. I think
good.
this is an interesting. This is an interesting.
Would you say the expectation here is one of the MLS teams goes ahead and wins this as well, unless there's a shock from some of the League Mexico ones?
No. I think the Liga MX clearly has the advantage once you start getting down into it.
getting into these knockout phases, this is the business end of it as well.
No, they're yeah. I mean, if I recall, the last team to win it was Seattle, and that was 3 years ago.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's what got them into the Club World Cup.
Club World Cup as well, through winning that. That's getting the
Yeah.
pathway as well, right? So
That's
yeah,
right.
so that's it. Interesting. Okay. Well, okay. So we've got obviously the final round obviously tonight at Vancouver against Saprissa at obviously in Vancouver, and so we'll see if they can do that.
And
then the
of
round
course,
16.
because it's not two teams from the United States, Fox is not putting it on the air.
Interesting. Yeah. Again, we
So
definitely need to
they're not
dig into
picking it
sort
up.
of. There's definitely a sort of broader sort of talk and discussion about sort of global TV rights and distribution and sort of viewership as well, because there's a lot of stuff going on, that's for sure.
Yes, there is.
Indeed. Well, sort of moving over, obviously for us in the US here, we'll have anyone who has an ESPN Plus subscription will obviously be able to get access to this content. But the FA Cup 5th round, obviously it's sort of coming together, and again, it's whittling down. I was looking through the fixtures earlier on today, and I was looking across, and I was thinking, like, who is the standout favourite here? Because you have had Arsenal get knocked out of it, Liverpool get knocked out of it, Chelsea get knocked out of it. I mean, I think just looking at like the biggest team here, I would say is probably Man City. But again, like with the form that they've been in, I wouldn't want to lean on them for this. So this does feel like it's suddenly a really interesting competition and quite wide open as well.
It is. You are correct. City's they are the Goliath that is remaining. Even though they're a wobbly Goliath, they got a bum knee, right? They got a bum knee and an injured back, but they're still dangerous, and they got one hell of a lucky draw. I mean, one hell of a lucky draw this particular round.
Well, I would agree that probably Plymouth Argyle, who they're facing, are probably one of the weaker and the lesser placed competition. But having just knocked out Liverpool in the previous round, this is the magic of the FA Cup that we've talked about. And again, this is the hope of the underdog is could they put together a cup run, and could they do it? Obviously, judging by your reaction, I don't think you're holding a lot of enthusiasm or opportunity for Plymouth. Do you think they're going to get turned over here?
No. And it's not, this has nothing to do with Plymouth itself. Okay, I want to be very clear. This has everything to do with City, because City will have noticed what happened in round 4 when Liverpool went to Plymouth. They started a team that was not their A team. Everybody knows it. Slot acknowledged it yesterday in his post-game interview. They're not going to make this mistake. This is the only title race they have left. There's
silverware,
nothing left.
Right? Yeah,
This is the only chance they have to put yet another piece of gaudy jewelry in their trophy case.
Yeah, they're going to lean into this one. They're going to prioritize this one. You better
believe this is the one they're going for.
Yeah,
I would be shocked if the A team does not start this game.
Interesting.
Shocked.
Okay.
Because if Pep puts up what is Pep saving them for?
Yeah, you're exactly right.
Thank you for saying that I'm right, because I am. But yeah, but no, you're right. That's it.
Well, I mean, the only other thing that you could say is he needs to put a run together in the league to get back up into the top 5, which is now for the Champions League, because it would be an absolute catastrophe. If you had to ask him, would you prioritize top 5 finish or FA Cup? You have to pick one or the other. What would you choose? I think he goes top 5 finish and gets Champions League soccer.
I agree, but he doesn't have to choose, because this does not, this does not in any way distract them from what they need to do in that league. They're sitting in 4th now.
Yeah.
So it's not like they have to fight their way in. They just have to stay there.
Yeah, they have to stay there.
And that's a big difference between, right? But if he can get a trophy, this will go a long way towards
it salves the sort of the sting of basically the sort of the train crash of a season they've had, where you can say, well, they still got some silverware and qualify top 4, so it's not a complete train smash, right? That would be it.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
And so and whether is he going to start Haaland? He might not, but Haaland is he's the icing on the cake. But I don't think you're going to be seeing the academy kids taking the field.
Interesting.
When the whistle starts the game, they're not going to be on the field.
I think he keeps Haaland on the bench and he keeps him as a reserve, and it pulls out the big guns after 60 minutes if it's not going the way he wants, right?
That's correct. But he will, I think, be on the squad. He will be in the squad.
I agree. He travels, And again, it's at home, so they're not sort of traveling all the way down to the southeast of England or southwest of England, having to sort of, lots of travel.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other fixture picks here as well that you like the look of and that will get your attention?
I've got a big upset. I got an upset pick tomorrow. I'm taking the Bluebirds.
Cardiff.
I'm taking the Bluebirds.
Cardiff?
I am taking the Bluebirds over Villa.
Why Cardiff?
I'm doing it.
Why is that?
Why that?
Yes. Villa,
no, it has nothing.
Palace,
it has nothing to do with
no.
It's not because I think that Eagles and Bluebirds are similar. It has nothing to do with it. I just think that Villa are exploitable. Let's just put that word in. There are to a smart and savvy team. There are areas where you can pick at them, and if Cardiff, and I think Cardiff has a smart, savvy enough group that they could do it. I'd not say it's going to be easy, but if I have to pick an upset, I'd say that this one is your biggest upset candidate.
Interesting. And unlike Man City, who don't have many other fixtures to worry about, Villa are playing against Club Brugge I believe it's on Tuesday, on the early fixture as well. So they are going to be distracted and will probably field a softer team for that. So that's a good shout as well. So for our previous guests, the soccer sharps as well, you think that they'd smell some blood in the water and smell some alpha in that trade. Yeah, you'd expect that. Any other picks here from your side, Qooligan, that would sort of you'd think
Fulham over Man U.
The
reason for that is because Man U has offended God. All right, they have squeaked miracles in the last 2 games that they did not deserve.
Yeah, and you think the footballing gods will punish them for their luck? Is that it?
Yes. If there is any justice in this world, they will tumble.
Yeah.
Preferably at the hands of Raul, right? Of Jimenez.
Yeah.
And and Traore.
Okay. Interesting.
Because I would love to see Traore flex those guns.
Those guns. Hey, the guy, that guy's an absolute beast. Absolute beast.
Yeah.
He still covers himself in Vaseline as well. Do you know that? So defenders can't hold on to his arms when he's running past them.
Of course.
He does that. Yeah.
Well, why not? They're the size of tree trunks. It's not like it's hard to grab those things. Boy.
Indeed.
Those aren't skinny noodle arms.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, those are my 2 picks there. I think it's if I'm going to go against common perception, I'd say that those are my 2 upsets. Yeah.
Interesting. I think what I like about this as well is if you look around, you've also got some you've got a non-Premier League sort of team fixture in Preston against Burnley, right? I think that's good. So you're going to have a sort of non-Premier League team into the quarterfinals, whoever will get through there. I suspect obviously Burnley probably sort of do on that one. I know they've been there. And then I know
apparently though their last few fixtures have been very, very stale 0-0 draws.
Okay. Yeah. Well,
so they're not noted in terms of their head-to-head competition. They're not noted for producing particularly spectacular shows of fireworks.
Yeah. Fair.
They tend to be very pedestrian, like midfield, tactical battles.
Okay, and then I'm surprised you didn't obviously call out the pick with the one that really jumped out at me was that South London derby going on of Millwall against Palace.
No, I have 2 games that I'm putting in as must-watch games, which is different from upset games, and that is my first must-watch game is Palace versus Millwall, because these are 2 teams who really don't like each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They are regional rivals.
Yep.
They never get to play each other because they've been separated by league for ever since 2010 when Palace was, moved up. So there's a lot of pent up anger, aggression, angst. Palace just poached Romain Esse from Millwall. There was some deep-rooted anger and resentment on the Millwall sides.
I forgot about that angle. Yes.
I mean, if he takes the field, I would love to hear how the crowd reacts. It's going to be one of the loudest games of the year.
That will be loud, and obviously Millwall are known for sort of having real sort of like aggressive and sort of rough support, sort of rough fan base.
Yep.
I'd go as far as to say as borderline hooligans, and that is for sure. So that is going to be a sort of more of a fight with a little bit of soccer breaking out in between the fights as well.
It could, right? And yeah, I'm excited for it because it's like you don't get to see them play each other often.
This is true. Yep.
I'm so happy that it's at Selhurst.
Yeah, that's
can't even tell you.
Yes.
And to be fair, Palace have been on very, very exciting form, and so I do expect them to win. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. It might not be comfortable, but I do expect Palace to win this one. I think it's. It's not going to be. Yeah, I agree with you. It's not going to be easy. That would be in terms of sort of looking at shocks and sort of against the grain, just looking through. Bournemouth against Wolves, you'd expect Bournemouth to roll over Wolves just because of the form that Bournemouth are in, and Wolves are fighting in relegation. But again, you never know; they could have a day. But yeah, I'd expect lots of
Wolves.
red cards, though. Lots of red cards, and Bournemouth in particular. I mean, they had one last week.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of a disciplinary question around Bournemouth. So they got to be careful. They're at home at least. So that's I think that'll make it a little easier. If they were going to Molineux, I think this would almost have been a toss up.
Yeah, it would have been.
But they're at home and they should be able to pull it out.
Okay.
That said, Wolves are dangerous, man. I mean, they're the best worst team in the league, right?
They are dangerously close to getting relegated. So they're a wounded animal, as you've mentioned in many times before as well, right? You don't want to battle a cornered animal. Never do it. You don't. Yeah.
Nope.
Newcastle Brighton is quite well contested and quite evenly matched. Obviously, Brighton are going to have to travel a long way to get up to Newcastle to go and actually play that one, but they're pretty in similar form. There's only a point between them.
It's a 50-50 for me. That's a 50-50.
I agree on that one.
You can't. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other one we haven't covered is obviously Forest Ipswich. Nottingham Forest, obviously, I think both of our favorite sort of underdog hero story for the season. They've been just absolutely incredible. They have been wobbling a little bit of late, which is fine. Mm-hmm. You can't have the sugar high all season, so they have to have had that. But obviously Ipswich are just, they're sort of pretty much down anyway. So again, another wounded animal story.
They deserved better last week. They didn't, they didn't seal the deal. They did everything they had to do to go into the locker room at halftime as up as they could be, but they couldn't finish it in the second half.
Yeah.
Right? And so, yeah.
I'd expect Forest to win this one. And again, based on that, Forest then get through to the quarterfinals with the upswing in the season that they've had. And you'd expect Man United will go out, depending on how the draw is. I think you're either, if I had to pick, I would think Forest or Man City are probably the sort of two top favourites to win overall. But if I had to sort of be pressed now and pick one, I'd like to see Forest get all the way and go and win this. I really would. I would like to see Forest get some silverware and qualify in the Champions League. That would be a wonderful, wonderful story. It really would.
I would prefer Palace to do it, but I totally appreciate what you're saying from a neutral's perspective. When I put my flip to neutral mind, I agree with you.
Yes, indeed. Okay, so that's the FA Cup fifth round, obviously on ESPN and ESPN Plus as well. So we'll be watching that. We'll see what's going on there. And then now moving on to obviously game week 2 of the MLS. So this is there was some, obviously I think the biggest upset obviously was, as we discussed, was San Diego, and now they're going to go and play against St. Louis. So, or St. Louis, depending on sort of the accents and the enunciation. That one, I think all of a sudden after that result, I'm going to be watching that game and I'm going to be checking them out because all of a sudden I'll be rooting for them because, again, love seeing the underdogs come through and see how they go. I hope that they can get a bit of a run together, but again, I think reality.
Well, and it's their home debut.
Okay.
Right. So San Diego is hosting, and down at Snapdragon Stadium, where so it's a good sized stadium. I think I would be shocked if they're not sold out. I'm sure they are. After their win, they are now going to be the hottest ticket in town. Mm-hmm. So, there is no other major sporting event in that area that's going to distract from them, unless you count preseason baseball, which I don't. And so, yeah, I mean, the question in my mind around this whole MLS week 2 was week 1 just a fever dream? Right? Was this for real? Are the Earthquakes good? I don't want that's. Are they good? Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, so this is like, of all the things that happened in the first week, some blips, some blurps, some draws. This is where you go, okay, was everything just bizarre and jitters, or is it now for real? And San Diego is one of those questions, right? That's a big question. The San Jose Earthquakes is the second question for me. And then, of course, Vancouver Whitecaps, right? Are they also for real? I mean, they thumped Portland, but Portland got a red card in the 13th minute, so they were playing with 10 men. So is that at all reflective of anything? I don't know. I'm really curious to see. And then, on the other side, you've got Columbus Crew, right? Columbus Crew, Philadelphia Union, Atlanta United, all sitting at the top of their tables. That's not unexpected, right? That seems to be fun. Union's a little surprising, but okay. They have a brilliant academy, so you'd always expect them to be able to pull up from the youth, even if they don't have the quality. And then, of course, a marquee matchup is Charlotte versus Atlanta, because Wilf should be making his debut. Wilf Zaha. So it's called I call it Wilfie versus Miggy. It's
Almiron
Wilfie
against
versus
Almiron,
Miggy.
exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. So you've got two, tried veterans of the Premier League playing here in MLS. I mean, what do we got? Let's see it.
Yeah.
Let's see it, because this could be good.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to ask a question here. I hope you have the answer to it. I don't know if you have. I'm not trying to put you on the spot here. This is a genuinely sincere question. Now, obviously, we can appreciate, to all listeners, we are primarily Premier League soccer fans. We are growing our interest and watching more of the MLS. And so my understanding is, obviously, you have 30 teams, 15 in the Eastern Conference, 15 in the Western Conference, okay? So why is it, and again, please check me here, and again, feel free to say I'm an absolute sort of fool for saying this, but I see a fixture of LAFC against New York City, okay? So, but are one of them not in the Western Conference and then one of them in the Eastern Conference? And then if so, why are they playing against each other?
So the conferences themselves are not exclusive, right? So there are always a handful of fixtures that cross conference every season.
Interesting. Okay.
Now, with 30 teams, you cannot play every team twice. That's not possible. It's just too many fixtures in, right? That would be 58. That'd be 58 games.
TaxAct knows small business owners can sometimes use a little help with their taxes. That's why TaxAct has Expert Assist, a team of live tax experts ready to answer any questions you may have. Think of them as your own personal sidekick. Not like one of those funny talking animal sidekicks, more like the super smart nerding out on tax code and business casual attire sidekick, but just as helpful and lovable. TaxAct. Let's get them over with.
Halliday presents, in the red corner, the undisputed, undefeated Weed Whacker Guy. Champion of hurling grass and pollen everywhere. And in the blue corner, the challenger, extra strength Saturday. Eye drops that work all day to prevent the release of histamines that cause itchy allergy eyes. And the winner by knockout is Saturday. Saturday, bring it on.
Okay. Well, wouldn't it be 28 games? Wouldn't it be 28 games in the league?
If you're playing
15...
each team twice.
Oh, but on both conferences, right? Yeah, of course. Okay.
On both conferences. Thank you,
yeah.
Balloons. AI sucks. Screw you, AI. But so what you do is you play every conference team twice. That's right. 28 games. And then you have a small handful of interleague, interconference matchups that I think are determined either randomly or there's sort of a predetermined set. I'm not entirely sure how that works, but that's the same as the USL does that. Only the USL has smaller conferences, so there's more interconference play.
Got it.
And that's also how the NFL and the NBA work as well, right? So all the American leagues have these regional conference systems where they play within their conference more frequently, but also do these marquee matchups to help spur rivalry across the thing. That's really what it comes down to.
And that's pretty okay. So thank you for explaining that to me.
Standard.
Because again, this is something that I, again, just baffled me a little bit as I'm sort of going deeper into the sort of the MLS world and understanding it, which is great. And the way that they're determined is kind of very much just obviously depending on, as I say, there's a random generator, there's an algorithm, I'm guessing, or there's some.
I would suspect it's not random, but it's an algorithm, because if it was random, you could end up playing the same team over and over again. I think what you do is you cycle through teams in a pattern.
Got it. Okay.
Now, I don't know what the pattern is.
Yeah.
I would suspect that if you look at LAFC, right? If you look at LAFC's history, they haven't played New York. They're playing who? Red Bulls? Is it Red Bulls or FC?
No, New York's FC. New York.
It's FC?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would suspect that they haven't played FC outside of a Open Cup and or a postseason match. They haven't played them for a long time, if ever. Only because LAFC is a relatively recent team, right? They've only been around 6 years.
Okay.
7 years, 8 years. So. Right. And that's the other thing, because teams get added, it sort of throws off the cadence, and now everybody wants to play Inter because it's a cash cow, right?
Yes, and you get to play against Messi and swap shirts with him and all those things. Well,
because I mean, Minnesota United, apparently Minnesota United. I think they get to play Inter. They're in the same. Minnesota. Sorry, is in the Western. I think they got to play Inter. And Inter was like, to move us to the higher stadium, the bigger one, because they've got the gigantic indoor stadium in St. Paul versus their soccer-specific stadium outside. And they said no, they want to play in the smaller soccer-specific stadium. And so, it's leaving money on the table, but I think making sure that their fans don't feel like they're being marketed to.
Got it. Okay.
Smart,
and,
right?
And then obviously the other corresponding, or not corresponding, but the other sort of then inter conference as well as then Houston are obviously playing Miami, obviously. So yeah, so they're playing.
Correct.
Again, so in Eastern have gone to a Western conference there as well. So that's right. Explains what that is. Got it. Right. That's really helpful to understand. It was always a head scratcher for me as someone who's on the upswing in terms of the learning curve of these the franchise model as opposed to the promotion and relegation model. Okay.
Yeah,
fantastic.
And then like Minnesota's playing Montreal. That's another cross rivalry.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah. And so it does happen occasionally where these things are where you're going to have some of these occur.
Got it. Okay. So it does. Yeah. It just kind of shakes it up as well. So it's not just stale in the same sort of 15 teams are competing against each other, and it spices it up.
Because otherwise it would get a little boring after a while.
They would hardly ever play each other except for when they go to the playoffs, and then even then it's still you're going to wait years. If we're an Austin fans, I know Miami were here the season before last, and obviously would love to go and see Miami here as Miami and Austin here. So that makes a hell of a lot of sense. Thank you for explaining that to me, Qooligan. Wonderful. Look at that. Education as well as banter and entertainment as well. Look at that. Any other final picks here as well? I think we're sort of we've been sort of covering.
No, I think we wait to see how it works out. Yeah,
that's how it is as well. Yeah, we've got the other one as well that I've been sort of tracking a little bit is just the New York Red Bulls. Again, I know now with Jurgen Klopp at the helm here as sort of the head of football development. I think is his official title, head of soccer, head of football. It will be interesting to see sort of how the New York Red Bulls are doing as well, particularly. So I'll be watching that game as well, of course. Portland against Austin.
They got lucky last year. They punched way above their weight.
They did, yeah.
To make it all the way into the finals. They're not looking particularly strong this year, in my opinion. And to my knowledge, Jurgen has not yet visited the United States.
Interesting.
To see what's happening. I think he's focusing on
the 3 European
Salzburg
teams
and
they
Leipzig.
Yeah.
Particularly since both really shat the bed in
the Champions League.
In the Champions League. That is a bigger need for them, is to shore up those 2 teams than to head on over to New York for a fancy dinner and some and looking at some museums.
Dinner and a show on Broadway, right? That's it. Yeah,
right?
For sure. Indeed. Wonderful. Well, Qooligan, as always, look at that. We've bounced around multiple different continents, multiple different countries, multiple different teams as well, which is fantastic. Again, another weekend packed with soccer, different competitions, different storylines, different narratives. And then, of course, so we will be back again. I think we should do another one on Monday because the Champions League picks up again as well. So we'll be back there for that. And then, of course, get back into the Premier League and, of course, continuing on with this MLS season as it develops and evolves and grows as well. So, Qooligan, as always, appreciate everything you've done.
Gary,
loved your writing this week
always
as well.
It's
looking fantastic. And we'll be back on Monday. Qooligan, as always.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.